When Yi Ming stepped on the 81st stage, the viewers' expression became strange. They were not optimistic about the crown prince. Although the other party was distinguished, the people the emperor found were all geniuses from the Legend College. But they couldn't imagine it anyway. Yi Ming not only won, but also very relaxed, and didn't seem to do his best. How powerful is the crown prince? He defeated the 6 French sevens in the pavilion, as if he did not move at all. Even when he broke the Liu He sword formation in the pavilion, he only used God a bit. It's nothing. It seems that even 2 or 3 points are not used. Quote. Yeah, the feeling that the crown prince gave me is unfathomable. The fighting in the pavilion seems to be an adult playing and beating a group of children, one party crushing the other. But they are all from the 7 kingdoms. Characters, and they have formed a battlefield. How could the crown prince win so easily? Quote. It's no wonder that the emperor will send a crown prince. This crown prince is really terrible. All of us underestimated him. If nothing unexpected, once the crown prince has reached the 81st stage, he will see the first 3 emperors. And then start the miracle. And every time a miracle is revealed, the testimony will be huge, and most of them will become one of the 3 emperors. Quote. If the emperor is not too high, he will definitely come to participate in this great sacrifice. It is a pity, also said, but the 81st stage is not so easy to pass. In history, its pass rate is lower than Sonning Luge. Let's see if this crown prince can pass. Quote. Yi Ming saw the wide stone steps, and he picked them up. When he stepped on the stone steps, he was surprised that there was no special feeling at all. Where was the test? 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and until the 9th, he felt an inexplicable pressure, which is a kind of spiritual pressure, a responsibility, a heritage. Obviously, most people do not feel this pressure at all, but Yi Ming felt it at this time. He frowned slightly, instinctively resisted the pressure, and developed a slow movement. But just for a moment, he broke through this mental barrier and continued to make great strides. 10th, 11th, and 18th levels suddenly increased tenfold. But this time, apart from his dignified expression, he didn't have any slight delay. Does the crown prince feel it? Why is the gate so easy? Someone said in wonder. The gate is too easy. Either it doesn't sense the test at all, or the qualifications are too bad. The first possibility is that he cannot pass the test and will be pushed down before the 27th step. The 2 possibilities are even smaller. It seems that when the emperor was still a teenager, he never walked in such a leisurely way, freely. Quote. Countless ministers, royal relatives, giants, staring closely at Yi Ming, they all want to know what kind of situation Yi Ming belongs to. 19th and 20th stages. Up to the 27th stage, Yi Ming's movements did not change at all. He successfully reached the 22nd stage. Going up, Crown Prince really is a **** of talent. Countless people exclaimed inside. They realized that the world of the 3 emperors was afraid that there would be variables. In fact, where does an outsider know that Yi Ming is under tremendous psychological pressure? He feels that his heart is over 100,000 mountains, which is an unbearable weight. A voice kept telling him that if he continued to carry on, he would bear heavy responsibilities, and once this responsibility was shouldered, he would never be able to shirk it. Can you be willing to work for the revival of the human race, even if it costs a lifetime? A voice sounded in his mind, majestic, loud, as if from 9 days. Yi Ming hardly thought, and said, yes. Will you be willing to fight for the dignity of the human race, even if the body is destroyed and the soul is dissipated? Yi Ming. I do. Do you wish to give up the ordinary life in your dreams, and only accompany you, and contribute everything to the greatest human civilization in the future? The voice asked a third question. Yi Ming was silent for a moment. Yes. With this answer, he realized that he had unknowingly stepped on the 81st step and entered the 3 Emperors' Hall. In the palace of the 3 emperors, there are 3 idols of the first 3 emperors. The 3 tortures of the mind seem to be from them. It's time to complete the 81st stage so quickly. People in the audience can no longer describe it with shock. Everyone's expressions are mixed with shock. joy, expectation, anxiety, and so on, which are extremely complicated. The prince's qualifications against the sky will certainly make the three emperors clearly clear, and suddenly they will become confusing. No one can see what will happen in the future. Some people think that Yi Ming will be the new hope of the three emperors' world, and lead the three emperors back to the peak of human power. Others also think that the crown prince will change the stable situation and make the three emperors restless. And more people, I want to see where the crown prince can go, for example, what miracles the first three emperors will show. Boom. A statue in the middle, a white plume and a white jade crown, is tall and imposing, and it is the image of the emperor. The emperor's idol emitted a white light, covering Yi Ming. At the same time, the heavens and kingdoms shook at the same time, and countless runes remembered themselves in the void, forming an unknown array that connected the heavens and kingdoms. An indescribably powerful force was all concentrated on Yi Ming, so that his body and shape were undergoing mysterious and inexplicable changes. This is the supreme supernatural power that changed lives. And it was left by the first emperor. A few knowledgeable people stood up fiercely, staring at the huge array of textures in the void. That pattern straddles many large worlds, even across many dimensions, and some people who have cultivated themselves can even see some ghost images of artifacts inside. The emperor's body was trembling slightly, and the emperor were also trembling. However, the difference is that the emperor's mood is frightened and confused, while the emperor is joy and shock, and the emperor's mood is more complicated. It is really unclear whether he should be happy or worried. Countless brothers, congratulations. The emperor did not know when he stood next to the emperor, and staggered halfway back. This is a form of respect. No emotion could be seen on the emperor's face, and he said lightly, "He Shiji. Emperor." The emperor will not hesitate to launch a large array to change his life against the sky. This shows that the crown prince has been internally designated as the next emperor's successor. No matter how genius Si Kongzhen is, no matter how supportive he is, can't change that fact. Quote. The voice did not fall, and a lightning fell, imprinted on Yi Ming's brows, forming a mysterious white mark that is an ancient word for heaven, which means that Yi Ming has been determined by the will of the first emperor to be the next heir to the emperor. Although the emperor had judged, you can see Yi Ming's heart-shaped ancient word, sky, and his soul was still deeply shocked. He laughed. Wu Liang brother, how? The emperor's eyes did not leave Yi Ming, saying, the emperor manifests his spirit, the emperor and the emperor will not remain indifferent, I am looking forward to it. Sure enough, when the pattern formed by the supreme supernatural power that changed the sky disappeared, the eyes of the emperor shot two golden lights, which were injected into Yi Ming's eyes. Among the golden light, there are countless minute and ugly runes, which are transferred from the emperor's eyes to Yi Ming's eyes. This the legendary three blessings of the three realms that can infinitely sublimate the human mind and body. At that time, the emperor performed this technique on 3,000 disciples, creating countless geniuses, and each of them later became an eternal giant. Many of them have created unique civilizations. But now, how can it be shown to the crown prince alone? Quote. The golden light disappeared, and an ancient, ground, character appeared on Yi Ming's left ear, but then disappeared. What? Is he also a descendant of the emperor in the future? The crowd froze now, completely confused. Even the emperor was unsure and looked at the emperor subconsciously. The emperor shook his head and said, the emperor and the emperor are the same person. This has never happened, and I don't know why. There are many discussions, and the statue of emperor has also moved. A magnificent scripture appears in the air. The pages of the book are opened, and countless scriptures are mysterious and indistinguishable characters, one by one flowing into Yi Ming's ears. No one else can hear it, but Yi Ming can hear the ancient and wise chanting sound, which sounds in his ears and is printed on his heart. Emperor was relaxed and smiled. This is the scripture left by the first emperor. There's something amazing in it. Billions of words fell down one by one and lasted for more than an hour before stopping. When all the texts fell, the scriptures disappeared, the miracles disappeared, and an old, human, character appeared above Yi Ming's right ear, and the scene was silent. Until this time, Yi Ming seemed to return from the dream-like feelings. He looked at the statue with a puzzled look, his expression was a little stunned. The emperor flashed, appeared in front of him, took his hand with his right hand, and slowly walked down the stone steps. My emperor! My emperor! My emperor! Innumerable people congratulated loudly. The will of the first three emperors, and the successors chosen at the same time, cannot be reversed by any force. In the future, even if it is an emperor, you must be kind to the crown prince. Of course, the status of the current emperor will also be extremely stable, at least being on an equal footing with the emperor. Hearing the tsunami-like congratulations, Yi Ming's heart is ancient, and compared to the glory at this time, he can feel that the responsibility of the household is too heavy. As early as when he ascended the stone steps and answered the three emperors' questions, he already knew that this one was not good. When the ancestors failed, how much hope did he have? The old emperor slowly greeted him with a slight gift, but did not say a word. Out of respect, Yi Ming also paid a gift. Emperor said, "Prince, go home." Light and shadow flashed, the two disappeared, appearing in the people's palace. My son, you immediately leave the world of the three emperors and walk around the world as Yi Ming. Don't come back until you are more powerful than your father. Ren Huang's tone was extremely heavy and full of deep worries. Yi Ming froze. He had thought that now he could hold the moon in the three worlds of the three emperors. Why? He asked. Because the three emperors' world can't protect you now. The emperor sighed longly. You have to be the emperor of the three emperors, and this must be a sensation. The three emperors' world certainly wants you to grow quickly, but many powerful exists, will try to erase you. Eliminate me. Who is it? Yi Ming was startled. From ancient times to the present, countless human civilizations qualified to become super civilized have been wiped out, not to mention one person. The emperor sighed longly, so you must leave, and never use the identity of the emperor until you are strong. Just use Yi Ming's identity to cultivate well and return to the strong. Yi Ming was sullen in his heart. Father Emperor, the three emperors can't protect me with such a powerful force. No. The emperor sighed. Those ancient beings are powerful enough to make people desperate. You will be strong in the future, and you will understand. After you leave, your identity will continue to exercise the crown prince on your behalf. Identity. However, the father declared that he is the deity. Yi Ming. In this way, isn't my identity dangerous? No, his qualifications are not as good as yours, and it should not cause those ancient existences to kill. Of course, he will fully cultivate him for his father and let him show enough genius to prevent outside doubts. You remember, if someone is against you, you must get rid of him. After speaking, the emperor handed a simple ring to Yi Ming and said, this is a part of the resources that can be used for the father. 100 million eternal coins are your resources for future growth. In addition, if you are in trouble, you can contact the father in secret, and the father will do his best to resolve it. Yi Ming took the ring and said in surprise, 200 million eternal coins, but 81 trillion long-lived coins, this is too much. The emperor said, how can there be more? Practice requires not only qualifications, but also resources. A big world can also support the power of several eternal life in 9 realms, so there are not many 100 million eternal coins. Yi Ming nodded. Yes. The emperor continued. Countless human civilizations have been wiped out by those powerful beings, so I have a suggestion for my father. If you really want to go far in martial arts, then strengthen yourself first and let you become the carrier of civilization. Yi Ming Yi. What does the father say? The emperor sighed longly. This is also a helpless suggestion. A strong person has limited influence after all, so it is relatively safe. But if a civilization has risen in an all-round way, it will soon be suppressed and obliterated. Civilization dies. It is also difficult for a strong man born in a civilization to protect himself. On the contrary, if a person is strong enough to support a civilization, he will be less suppressed. The Supreme Academy of Humanity hopes to cultivate such people. For example, the Confucian and Taoist master is such a person. He alone bears everything of the Confucian and Taoist civilization. His strength is enough to build a super civilization. He didn't, but waited patiently. Quote. Yi Ming was startled. What? The father said that the master is fully capable of establishing a super civilization. Of course, in his thoughts, the Confucian and Taoist civilization could be immediately sublimated. But he did not do so because the time was not mature. If in the future there are 10 master-like people, or even 100 master-like people, then a collective outbreak of human super civilization. Quote. Yi Ming immediately understood, and said, Father Emperor, children and ministers. Go, if not necessary, don't contact my father. Yi Ming summoned the boy of time and space and disappeared in a flash. The emperor's face was rosy, and he murmured, I did not expect that long there are such artifacts, which can freely travel through time and space. After experiencing all the glory in the three emperors' world, but in the end it was all empty, Yi Ming still obediently returned to the Tianyuan continent, using his original identity. His people returned to the Tianyuan continent, and the first thing they did was to find the Zuo Do Huang, because he wanted to kill this person. The Zuo Do Huang knew that the invisible sword was on him because of the lack of a sword, so he also knew that Long Xiaobai was the same person as him. Although he didn't know yet, Long Xiaobai was the crown prince, but after all, it was a dangerous factor and must be removed. Moreover, he was really displeased with Zuo Du Huang, who had fought more than once, and would not be uneasy when killed. 1,000 miles from Jianqi, there is a dirt mountain. Yi Mingpan sat on the dirt hill and said to the invisible sword, Last time the Zuo Du Huang found you because of the Wusheng sword, and then I knew my secret. Exactly, you go and tell the Wusheng sword and say I am here. Invisible sword. Master, there should be no reason for Zuo Do Huang to come. Of course he does. Yi Ming sneered. You told Wusheng sword that I would kill him with my own hands at the sword fight and then become the heir of the Lord. Invisible sword. Well, let me try it. If Zuo Do Huang really comes, then he really seeks his own way. After that, the invisible sword disappeared. In Jianqi, Zuo Do Huang is practicing a wonderful skill, and suddenly the vigor sword in his waist shakes, his voice sounds in his mind. Master, I just noticed that the invisible sword is nearby, so I went to check and control, talk to it a few words. Quote. Yi Ming is nearby. Isn't he in Wushan Valley? Zuo Du Huang raised his eyebrows. He was extremely displeased with Yi Ming. If he hadn't had a chance, he would have eliminated Yi Ming. Wusheng sword. The invisible sword is very arrogant. It is said that his master will replace the master and become the next saint. Zuo Zhuangwang snorted heavily. Fantasy delusion. Does he think he can become the lord with an old husband? Having said that, he was still disturbed in his heart, and asked where Yi Ming was now. Wusheng sword. It's thousands of miles away and I don't know what I'm doing. I asked that invisible sword, and it didn't say anything. Zuo Du Huang laughed with a smile. Since you know where he is, don't blame me for being cruel. After that, he crushed a jade charm. A moment later, a middle-aged man in black appeared in front of him. Zuo Du Huang immediately got up and said, Elder Shu, I have something to ask for your help. This Elder Shu is an important figure in Jianqi. He is second to the eternal life and is second only to him. Elder Shu has always been the man of Zuo Tianong, the old saint. He immediately said, What's the matter? Zuo Du Huang, the disciple of He Chong's old ghost is Yi Ming, who got the quota last time, is nearby. He Chong does not seem to know that he is back. I want to take this opportunity to get rid of this child. I wonder if Elder Shu help me. Is that Yi Ming? This son is very famous in Wushan Valley. If it can't be used by us, it will be a disaster. But after all, it's too easy to kill him. Well, my husband is willing to help you. Yi Ming was sitting on the mountain, Shalwa squatted on his shoulder, eating the jerky with relish. These jerky meat is not simple. They are all made from the meat of rare spirit and beasts. They are high in nutrition, good in taste, and naturally expensive. A finger-sized piece of jerky needs at least 10,000 yuan. What's more terrible is that this cat eats constantly every day. The cost of dried meat alone is tens of millions. This does not count its other retail, what linguo, elixir and so on. Had it not been for Yi Ming's recent fortune, it would have been impossible to raise this cat. Shalwa, someone will come to kill me, you will destroy him. Yi Ming said, wiping Shalwa's shiny fur. Shalwa is a professional food. Nowadays, it is delicious, and naturally it will not refuse, and nodded again and again. At this moment, two people came down with a sound from the sky. These two people, one middle-aged and one young, are Elder Shu and Zuo Douhuang. The Emperor Zuo stared at Yi Ming with his eyes on the dead, and said, Yi Ming, we have met again. Or, should I call you Long Xiaobai? Yi Ming was still sitting. He picked up a piece of dried meat and chewed it. It was really fragrant. No wonder Shalwa was eating endlessly. He asked, Zuo Douhuang, who, besides you, knows that I am Long Xiaobai? Why, you're still afraid of this incident? It seems that it's nothing, right? Zuo Douhuang sneered, is there any other secret? Yi Ming, that's not true. I just don't want others to know. Before that, only I knew. But all this didn't matter, because you were already dead. Zuo Douhuang said coldly. It seemed that he had settled Yi Ming. Yi Ming's expression remained unchanged. You are going to kill me. I am a disciple of the Lord, at least a disciple in name. Huh, you are dead, how did you kill the old ghost? Yi Ming, you have been pressing me, but what can you do? You are going to die soon, everything will be wiped out, no one will remember you. And I am the left, and will enter the sword world and become a peerless figure. Quote. You have a lot of nonsense. Yi Ming shook his head. Waste like you, still want to be a peerless character. It's ridiculous. Zuo Douhuang sneered. Everyone is going to die. Is it interesting to slap the tongue? After waving his hand, Elder Shu beside him did not move. Suddenly, the Zuo Douhuang turned his head and saw Shu Lao face frightened, staring at the little cat on Yi Ming's shoulder. He felt a little bad, and said, Elder Shu, what's wrong with you? Elder Shu swallowed, and from the moment he arrived, he felt a terrible murder. In his eyes, the little cat is a flood monster, and it is difficult to resist the terrible existence. Before he shot, he was frightened and terrified inside. Emperor, Yi Ming is a disciple of He Shengju, how can we kill him? You are too sensible. After I go back, I must tell you to He Sheng, and let the old lord punish you ignorant young man severely. Elder Shu suddenly changed his face, and instead scolded Zuo Douhuang. Zuo Douhuang was not a fool, and immediately knew that the situation had changed. This Elder Shu must have felt the terrible danger, so he said so intentionally. He turned his eyes and deliberately said, Elder Shu, why do you want to protect this kid? Elder Shu snorted. I have a good relationship with Lord Sheng, don't you know? Don't say your grandfather is the Lord, even if you are the Lord, you can't be so unruly. Yi Ming said impatiently. Okay, stop acting. Shalwa, go on, brush. Shalwa turned into an afterimage. When it moved, Elder Shu was locked in by the force of terror. He couldn't move at all, and it was impossible to fight back. The afterimage flickered in front of him, and the latter's head was removed, and the baby girl was picked up by the cat, and died on the spot. The **** scene made Zuo Douhuang's face pale, and he had to run away subconsciously. At this time, Yi Ming moved, and against Zuo Douhuang, he didn't need Shalwa's help. A light and shadow, approaching the extreme, was immediately stopped in front of Zuo Douhuang. The latter yelled, and Wu Shengyan cut it out fiercely, using the Yutian Heidi sword. However, Yi Ming has already learned the Five Emperors' swordsmanship and refined the Five Elements swords into the Five Elements slaying technique. So in the face of Yutian sword technique, he just blocked at will, and there was an overwhelming collapse. Ding! The powerful sword had no raw sword, and it was blown directly. The left tiger's mouth cracked and spewed upside down. But before his power to fly backwards was used up, Yi Ming appeared behind him again, pressing a palm against his back, and said lightly, Go. As soon as he spit it out, Zuo Duhuang's body exploded, bursting into a mist of blood, and he died completely. Yi Ming murmured, "When this person dies, no one knows my true identity. In the future, I will only be Yi Ming, and no longer a dragon and a monk." As soon as the Zuo Duhuang died, there was a roar in the sword pond. Soon after Yi Ming left, an old man with gray hair appeared. This man was Zuo Tianong, the grandfather of Zuo Duhuang. Zuo Tianong stared at Elder Shu's body and the blood on the ground, making a scream. "My dear grandson, who did you like? Who is it?" The voice was full of resentment, and the listener was furry. But at this time, Yi Ming had reappeared in Wushan Valley. On this way, he had inquired clearly. After the return of Emperor Shang, he did not doubt him, did not ask where he went, and nothing else was abnormal. That being the case, he returned to find out. Valkyrie Valley is more important to him. Now that he has achieved Valkyrie, it is time to explore the road of martial arts. People in Valkyrie Valley should be able to help him. Wushan Valley looks the same as before. When he returns to the Yixin Garden of Kushatang, the maids immediately greet him. The first one is the pity he had just kept. Seeing Yi Ming, Piao Er's eyes were red, and he sobbed, "Master, Piao Er doesn't think you're not coming back. Why is it so long after you go out?" Yi Ming almost forgot about this young girl. Seeing her caring for herself so much, she felt warm and said, "I went out to do business, so I came back a few days late. During this time, you lived comfortably in Yixin Garden." Lianer said, "Yi Xinyuan's life is very comfortable, but there is no grandpa, and Lianer can't lift the spirit what he does." Yi Ming laughed. "You don't have to do this, I don't actually help you. You are born beautiful, and you can become rich and rich in time. Poer don't want to be rich and rich, Poer just need to be with the uncle." Poer said with a small mouth, and he didn't seem to like Yi Ming. Yi Ming. Poor, during this time, did anyone come to me? Lian thought about it. A man named Mo Yidao has been here, and he has been here more than once. In addition, the church owner has sent someone to preach, saying that once the uncle comes back, he will see the church owner. Yi Ming frowned slightly. The emperor had asked him to teach him what to do to her son-in-law, and personally sent Guo Tado to speak. However, Guo Tado has already died in the forbidden area of life. He now calls himself again. Is it necessary to bring it up again? Thinking of this, he was a little upset at first, but he had no interest in the coming son-in-law. But Di Shang was the master of the seven-killing church, and he couldn't help going. Let Pior take care of the garden. He went to the residence of Emperor Shang of Kushatang, Junwu Garden, with a little preparation. There is a pavilion in Junwu Garden. When he arrived, Dixiong was in the kiosk, playing chess with a man. The man's momentum was not under Emperor Shang. His eyebrows were like swords. Looking at his 30s and 40s, his attitude was calm and uncomfortable. Yi Ming met from a distance. "Church master, are you calling me?" With that, people approached. Emperor Shang just dropped a sun and laughed. "Yi Ming, this is Han Juin Han, and Han Shan, who is second only to you on the Wu Sheng list as his beloved son." When Yi Ming's heart moved, Guo Tado mentioned Hanshan. "Is it related to the cold Juin?" He clenched his fists and said, "Yi Ming, the younger, has met Han. Han Juin didn't look at Yi Ming, but just nodded slightly, and followed him. Emperor Shang said, "Yi Ming, some time ago, Guo Tado went to you and said something, do you remember?" Yi Mingxin said, and immediately said, "Senior Guo mentioned Xingyan sect, saying that he wanted me to be my son-in-law, and also said that I would accept his challenge, and deliberately lost, and gave up the position on the martial arts list." Emperor Shang said, "It was originally such a plan, but now you seem to have stepped into Valkyrie, how can Han Shan challenge you?" Yi Ming. What does the host want his subordinates to do? Emperor Shang. This matter has nothing to do with my seven-killing church, let Brother Han talk to you. After speaking, he actually stood up and turned away. Yi Ming then looked at Han Juin, who said, I hate others to play half of the game. Yi Ming, would you like to finish this endgame? Yi Ming nodded. The junior is willing. With that said, he sat in the position of the former emperor and quickly dropped off. Instead of chaos, he only used 9 yuan to calculate the array. He was not afraid of each other. The two settled quickly, with several hands in a row. The situation in the market changed a lot, and the situation that was originally quite favorable turned out to be detrimental to Yi Ming. His expression was so dignified, he stared at the chessboard. Obviously the 9-element arithmetic was perfect, but why was it gradually falling? Han Juyin, are you strange? Why do you obviously have no choice but to lose this game? Yi Ming bowed his hand and said, please enlighten me. In the high and deep realm of chess, you don't look at precise and far-reaching calculations, but potential, and confidence and will. This is very similar to martial arts. If your martial arts are more subtle and your skills are deeper, if you have a weak will and lack of confidence, the momentum is weak, then you will never become a true Valkyrie. Quote. Yi Mingxin said that the other party did not talk about business. How could he talk about martial arts practice? But this was exactly in his arms, saying, Senior, juniors are in doubt, and want to ask their predecessors. Say. Han Juyin did not refuse. Yi Ming. Senior, today's martial arts, is there an open way that the general public can cultivate? Han Juyin shook his head. No, most martial arts are just imitating their predecessors. Few people have taken their own unique path, let alone created one. Even if someone can create a unique martial arts path, it is also suitable for their own body. Quote. If others want to learn, they can only explore it because of this. There are not many martial arts today, far less than the number of Shinto monks. Yi Ming. But the senior has reached the second peak of martial arts. You say that, it is the martial arts duality and the longevity realm. Han Juyin indifferently said, when you really take that step, you will find that the so-called secondary is never ending. Quote. Yi Mingyi. How do you say this? Han Juyin. If I tell you that it is not good for you, it will fix your martial arts thinking. Han Juyin said, but if you insist on wanting to know, I won't tell you. Quote. Yi Ming thought for a while, but did not make a request after all, saying, thank you for your guidance. Han Juyin. It's not my intention to call you, but my wife wants to send you to Nebula to be a son-in-law. Why? Yi Ming was puzzled. Even if I go, will the young lady of Nebula teach me like me? You only have to go. As for the outcome, it will not affect the benefits you are about to get. Han Juyin said, this is a transaction, you only have to do as required. As for the success or failure, it is our business and you nothing. Quote. As for why, you don't even need to know. Han Juyin was very straightforward. Can juniors refuse? Yi Ming asked. Of course you can, but do you have a reason to refuse? Han Juyin laughed. Because if you promise, you will not only have the opportunity to enter the nebulae, but also get my guidance, which will make you take less detours in martial arts and terribly wrong way. Quote. Yi Ming was silent, thinking that the daughter of the Nebula Master could not meet him, so this time he should play it all. Thinking of this, he said, Senior, do I only need to teach at Nebula? No other requirements? No, you just have to go to the nebulae and meet the daughter of the nebulae. Han Juyin said, if it doesn't work, you can safely return to the Tianyuan continent. Yi Ming thought for a while and said, okay, the junior promised. However, the junior also wanted to borrow a few days from the senior to take care of some martial arts problems. Natural. Han Ju agreed cheerfully. That's it, 2 people are sitting in the kiosk and you ask me the symbol. The sun goes down and rises again, day by day, time flies. Yi Ming was completely immersed in the questioning, and he throws out all the questions one by one, and Han Juyin's explanation is always so perfect and mysterious, which makes him stunned, and it feels like pulling the clouds and seeing the moon. When Yi Ming asked the last question, he suddenly felt that the weather was getting colder, and frost had appeared on the ground. It turned out that he had unknowingly spent 749 days in the pavilion. Thank you for your advice, and the juniors benefited a lot. Yi Ming stood up and thanked him sincerely. Han Juin. I am also a martial arts man, and I am happy to help you. I hope you can go farther than me. After finishing, he also got up, and this time the questioning officially ended. Han Juin was sent away. Emperor Shang appeared again, and smiled. It seems that you have agreed to Han Juin's conditions. Yi Ming. There is no reason not to agree. I will not lose anything, and I will gain something. Most importantly, I don't think that Miss Nebula will look after me in this small place. Emperor Shang. In fact, behind the Valkyrie Valley is the Nebula religion. If you can become the son-in-law of the Nebula religion, we also have light on our faces. Yi Ming was about to say something, and suddenly found that Dixiong had a slight scar on his right eyebrow and a trace of blood. His heart moved. The church owner was injured. Emperor Shang said lightly. I killed Tian Yuan first, but unfortunately did not participate in beheading him, let him run away. Yi Ming was startled. God is the 7 realms of Changshang, how can you escape under the master of the church? He speculated that the strength of this emperor should be the long life 9 realms, which is very scary. Emperor Shang sneered. What is the longevity of the 7 realms is just his strength. I tell you that in Tianyuan mainland, the real masters list is the Valkyrie list. That day the list was only for outsiders. Yi Ming said. I heard that the master's strength is not in the 9th realm of Changshang, but why didn't he come to kill the ancestors and blood ancestors at first? Instead, he saw their innocent civilians start. Emperor Shang was silent, and said, Xingyan teaches to give orders not to let us shoot. Speaking of this, he looked at Yi Ming. You have a relationship with Tiandaomen. How about the strength of Tiandaomen? Dixiong asked him instead. Yi Ming. I don't have much status in Tiandaomen. But the guardian and guardian beast of Tiandaomen should not be under the master. Emperor Shang nodded. I know that patron saint, it is really great, I am not sure of winning him. As for the patron beast, I just heard about it and never saw it. Yi Ming pressed the small flower in the pelt's skin pocket, don't let it come out, and said, the guardian beast is a god-eating cat. It has an extraordinary origin. Emperor Shang, are you eating cats? Really terrible existence. When he came out of Junwu Garden, Yi Ming returned to his Yixin Garden, and the first thing he saw was Lear. Wire asked with concern. Uncle, why did you see Tang for so long? Yi Ming. Nothing, talk longer. Poor blinked her eyes and said, Uncle, I heard you're going to Nebula to teach you to be your son-in-law. Yi Ming is not surprised. When Mo Yidao and Guo Tado approached him, the maid servants heard the conversation. He said lightly, yeah. Lian shook his lips. How can a person like Grandpa go to the door with someone else? Yi Ming found it interesting and asked with a smile, so what do you think I should do? Lian shook her pink fist. Of course I refused strictly. Yi Mingle was happy, and said, the other party is the young lady of Nebula Education. She has a high status. How can you look at me? I'm here to deal with it. But in case the young lady sees you, uncle? Asked the poor child. Yi Ming laughed. Fancy me. In this world, I have always been the right person. Unless the young lady of Nebula teaches has a problem, she will definitely not look at me. You do and know, my little child, our Tianyuan mainland is really a very weak big world. Nebula teaches to control many civilizations, and under each civilization there are many big worlds covered. From there, just find a big world, and it is estimated that it is not much weaker than our Tianyuan continent. Quote. Wei said in surprise. So, Grandpa is just a small person in a small county, and the young lady who is taught by Nebula is the princess who stands high. Yi Ming, your metaphor is appropriate. Then, will the princess fancy a small person in Shaoshanchang? That may be so, Poor said, maybe the young lady likes the uncle like this. Yi Ming, I think you read more folklore novels. Poor hummed, no, Yi Ming. Okay, I'm going to practice. If you're busy, don't bother me. Lianer, uncle, if you go to Nebula, can you bring him? Wanda Grandpa has become the son-in-law of Nebula, and you must bring your son-in-law with you. Although Yiming didn't think he would be the son-in-law of the door, it was good to have Pior, because he didn't know how long he would stay there, so it would be pleasant for Pior to be a caring little girl. He nodded immediately. Okay, take you. Pior happily jumped up. Great. Lianer retreated. Yiming began to digest what he learned from Han Juin during this time. A few days passed and the agreement with Han Juin came. That day, he came to Hanfu with his pity. Hanfu is located in the middle east of Wushan Valley. It is a small estate. As soon as Yiming arrived, the supervisor welcomed him to the hall. In the hall of the Han family, Han Juin was already waiting for him. Seeing him, he smiled. Yiming, are you ready? Yiming, yes, everything is okay. Han Juin, the trip to the nebula will be accompanied by someone, and the rest will be left to him. If you have any questions or requirements, you can communicate with him. Then, Mo stepped out. Brother Yi, I will be with you during this trip. Mo Yidao laughed. Yiming, are we only two? Mo Yidao, yes. Then he took a look at Lear, and said that Yiming could bring a follower girl. Yiming, so hard for me. It's not hard. Let's not disturb Master Han. For the rest, let's talk by ourselves. Mo Yidao laughed. Han Juin really left, leaving the three in the hall. After some exchanges, Yiming learned that today he will go directly to the nebulae through the teleportation array. With Nebula, Yiming is not directly able to see the young lady of Nebula, but must pass through various levels and select strange layers. Mo Yidao told him that he wanted to see the young lady of Nebula, and not to meet three conditions. The first condition is to join the Nebula religion and become a disciple with more than 5 stars. The second condition is to enter the priest's office to do business through the application. Third, to give credit and get the Lord's appreciation. After listening to these 3 conditions, Yiming couldn't help but said, these 3 conditions cannot be achieved overnight. It's okay, Mo Yidao said with a smile. 1 year can't work for 2 years, 2 years can't work for 3 years. It's impossible, we don't blame you. Yiming nodded. Okay, let's start. Just above the cold house, there is a huge teleportation array, which is very expensive and can directly reach the nebulae. The base of the teleportation array is a huge platform, and the 3 of them are standing on the platform. A moment later, the teleportation array started, and a white beam of light rose into the sky, and the 3 disappeared without a shadow. In the passage of time and space, Yiming felt that he had spent a few days, and then the strange light disappeared, and they appeared in a large mansion. As soon as a person comes out, he feels that the atmosphere here is absolutely different from the Tianyuan continent. The air is filled with a very high level of aura. Mo Yidao said excitedly. Brother, Nebula taught. Where is this? Yiming asked. The main altar of the Nebula religion is where one of the core fragments of the ancestral continent was called the Nebula continent. You also feel that the aura of the Nebula continent is very advanced. Mo Yidao explained. After leaving the big house, Yiming saw a straight and wide street. Looking at the shops on both sides, it seems that it is not much different from the Tianyuan mainland and even the 3 Emperors' world. Mo Yidao led the way, saying that it was necessary to familiarize Yiming with a new environment. This street is located in a relatively remote place, so it is not prosperous. There are too many cities in the Nebula continent, which can only be regarded as a smaller one. We settle here first, and when you are used to everything, we are ready to join Nebula teaches. Quote. Mo Yidao said. Yiming. Old Mo, isn't Mrs. Han a Nebula teacher? I wonder if she can help me and let me easily enter the Nebula Church. Of course not, but you are so qualified, brother, there is no problem joining Nebula, just time sooner or later. Yiming. Is there no national dynasty on this Nebula continent? Everything is ruled by Nebula. In contrast, there are countless dynasties and nations on the Nebula continent, but they all follow the Nebula religion. Mo Yidao explained. In this way, the Nebula religion can be managed without labor, only need to manage these countries and dynasties, save effort and effort. Quote. The country we live in is called Bashangwo. It is a medium-sized country. Bashangwo belongs to the dynasty of the True Dragon Dynasty. The True Dragon Dynasty is also one of the 9 dynasties of the Nebula continent. Mo say it across the board. Mo Yidao. That's nature. The Nebula continent is more than 100 times larger than the Tianyuan continent. As for its population, it is hundreds of times larger than the Tianyuan continent. There are also tens of trillions of people. 100 million is 1 trillion, several tens of trillions, that is a billion people. Yi Ming was very surprised and said, "It is really better to manage the country with such a large population." After spending half a day, Yi Ming basically walked around this small city, and felt that it was about as prosperous as Tianyuan's east and north, but it was only a small place here. When returning to the big house the next day, Lianer had prepared his meals and waited. Mo Yidao laughed. "I still think the thoughtfulness of my brother came with such a niece, otherwise we will have to go to the restaurant to eat, and it may not meet the taste." Yi Er's cooking skills are excellent, and the materials used are exquisite. Yi Ming's meals are highly praised, not to mention Mo Yidao. The next day and the next day, Yi Ming did nothing serious, but just played around and sometimes took pity. After returning, it was a bland practice. On the 7th day, Mo Yidao finally said, "Brother, you have adjusted a lot these days, you can try to join the Nebula teaching." Then told Yi Ming the process. If you want to join the Nebula, you must pass the selection of a city. There are counties in the city, there are states in the county, and there are states in the state. After repeated selections, only those recommended by the country will be eligible to formally go to the Nebula Church to be tested. When Yi Ming heard this complexity, he immediately became impatient and said, "There should be a simple way." Mo Yidao shook his head. "No, I can only go this step by step." I was making tea for Yi Ming aside, and after listening to it, she said, "Master, I go out these days and listen to someone say something. There is a person who has not been selected, who has selected the hegemonic country. The first person was injured. As a result, the landlord issued a warrant and sent the person directly to Nebula, making him a disciple of Nebula. Many years have passed. It is said that the person is now 2 stars disciple. Quote. Yi Ming's eyes lit up and he said, "Can I do that?" Mo Yipan panicked and said quickly, "Brother, don't mess around. Most of the people who can enter the selection have a family background. If you challenge them, you will definitely offend the forces behind them. We are only Tianyuanjiao, the little ones who come will not easily sinners." Quote. Ming disagreed, saying, "If I become a disciple of Nebulae, how can these forces help?" Xiao smiled. "Yes, as long as the uncle joins the Nebula teaching, the small forces in these places will never dare to retaliate." Mo Yidao stared at fiercely, then turned to Yi Ming and said, "Brother Yi, I still feel that this is a risky move. We are not familiar with life here, in case something goes wrong, I can't protect you." Quote. Yi Ming said lightly, "I don't need Brother Mo's protection, even if I have trouble, I can solve it by myself." Mo Yidao knew that persuasion was useless, and had to say, "Okay. But this thing needs to be planned out, so don't make any mistakes." A new group of characters selected by the hegemonic country was announced half a month ago, with a total of 50 people. These 50 people have already ranked, and are waiting for the Nebula warships to come to pick them up and go to the Nebula religion for the final assessment. Only after passing the assessment can they be regarded as true Nebula disciples. But as far as Yi Ming knows, at most only 2 or 3 of these 50 people can join the Nebulae. Moreover, even if they join the Nebula teaching, they are often 1-star disciples all their lives, and it is difficult to have the opportunity to advance. At this moment, in the station of the hegemonic country, 50 people have been selected at various levels, and finally they can go to the Nebula to participate in the assessment. At this moment, they are chatting and drinking, very comfortable. This station is quite luxurious, with gardens and restaurants in it after all. Those who live here, but have the opportunity to join the Nebula teaching, naturally cannot be treated badly. As it happens, the Lord of the Kingdom is also here today. As the master of a country, he was very polite to the selected candidates, who might be the nebula of the future to teach his disciples, but he must not neglect. On the open-air mat held in the garden, the hegemony host held a glass of wine, respected 50 people, and laughed. Dear everyone, you will go to Nebula to teach in a few days, and I wish you all to become disciples of Nebula. Quote. One of the 50 people stood up and paid homage to the Lord. This person is the number one person among the 50, named Tai-Sen Luo, and Fa Sancho. Tai-Sen Luo laughed. His Majesty, I will not forget your hospitality after joining Nebula. It should be everywhere. The landlord laughed. Both parties were drinking, and they heard a voice saying, "Who is the first of you?" Eyes were cast on the birthplace of sound. I saw a young man walked in with a smile. Ming. Bold. Who are you? A guard rushed up to take Yi Ming down. This guard is a close kick to the master of the kingdom, the 7 realms of law. But before he got close, he was blown away by Yi Ming. The guards were shocked, and more people were going to take action. The landlord has seen countless big scenes, but is very calm, saying, "This friend, who are you? What is this for?" Yi Ming, haha, smiled and arched his hand. I have seen the emperor, and I have heard that the emperor treats the wise men for a long time, and now he sees it, it is well deserved. In Sha Yeming, I heard that there are 50 people here who are going to Nebula to take the test. I want to challenge the first of the 50. Quote. Arrogance. I don't know how high the sky is. I think it's tired and crooked. The crowd immediately laughed at Yi Ming, but the so-called mockery on their faces was unnatural. You know, the guard just now was in the realm of Fhe, and was actually shocked by a single palm. How strong is this person? Many people are not embarrassing, but none dare to approach Yi Ming. Instead, they set their sights on Tai-Sen Luo, who is the first. Tai-Sen Luo stared with a somber face, staring at Yi Ming. Friend, I am the first, you want to challenge me? You know, the people who challenge me always have only one result, that is death. Yi Ming. It's okay, I won't die anyway. I have to say sorry before starting the fight, because I really don't want to come here again after a lot of tests. That's too much trouble. No way, I can only challenge you. As long as I beat you, I must be qualified to teach at Nebula, right? Quote. Tai-Sen Luo sneered. Friends know who I am. It doesn't matter who you are. Yi Ming knew that the other party was going to bring his family out, and said lightly, unless your family members are all from the Nebula education, don't tell them, that won't scare me. Tai-Sen Luo snorted. You are so arrogant. Ming Chao bowed his head and said, Your Majesty, I wonder if I can challenge this person. The founder of that country had an extraordinary challenge to let a person who challenged the first place to join the nebulae. Facts have shown that that person has developed well. He is now a 2-star disciple. According to the letter, he may even have the opportunity to become a Samsung disciple in the future. The status of Samsung disciples, wherever they go to a place, the local landlord must greet him personally, and he has a very high level of hospitality. Oh, of course you can challenge. Since Tai-Sen Luo is the first place, he is not afraid of any challenge. The landlord laughed and agreed on the spot. Tai-Sen Luo was upset, but couldn't say anything. His first place is actually hydrated, and his real strength is second or third place. However, the man with the best strength is not as good as his family. Of course, he also gave the other party sufficient benefits, otherwise the real first place would not be obedient to stay honestly in the second place. Yi Ming saw the Lord of the Kingdom agree, and laughed. So brother, please enlighten me. After that, he suddenly punched. But the two of them were dozens of steps away. He struck out in one step, and rushed forward in secret, the wind howling, the thunder blasting, the momentum was very amazing. His fist was actually an ordinary move, but he was too powerful, and even ordinary moves could have extraordinary effects. Tai-Sen Luo was frightened and moved his palms with all his strength. He wanted to break Yi Ming's blow in front. However, while he was focusing all his attention on Yi Ming's punch, there was a sudden force coming from underground. His feet were sour, and the whole person was knocked down, and a muffled sound was heard in the air. Snapped. Tai Senluo fell to the ground inexplicably in this way, covered with crispy hemp, and could not move for a while. It turned out that Yi Mingming repaired the boardwalk and secretly ran into the warehouse. A force guided him down the ground, and the opponent lost his combat power in one hit. The viewers were stunned. The first Tai Senluo was so easily defeated. After the founder was shocked, it was, ha ha, laughing. Little brother is really amazing, no wonder dare to challenge the first place. Well, the original 50, disqualified, you will replace it. There was a sudden cry in the crowd, and it was the original 50. Now that Yi Ming was caught in, and there were only 50 people, he was naturally disqualified. How can he not be sad? Tai Senluo recovered after a while. He could only stare at Yi Ming fiercely, dare not come to challenge again. The person in charge knows Yi Ming's horror, and others may not have acted at all, otherwise he would already be dead. At least, he would never be able to hit the main guard of the Seven Kingdoms with one stroke. The Lord re-entered the feast to congratulate Yi Ming, and those who had mocked Yi Ming before also lined up toast. Yi Ming did not like this kind of communication, not to mention that such communication is worthless, so after drinking a few glasses of wine, he went to meditate aside. The head of the country was not reluctant, and then he dispersed and returned to his palace. The next day, Li Er and Mo Yidao also lived in the post. After waiting another day, the Nebula warship finally arrived. Yi Ming could see at a glance that this was an 8-star battleship, which made him very shocked. Just to greet those who participated in the assessment, they could actually send 8-star battleships. How rich is this Nebula teaching? The battleship appeared, and the owner had been waiting for a long time. Baba landed on the battleship to greet people. Yi Ming and others are still waiting on it. After half an hour, the founder came down again and smiled to the crowd. The roster has been handed over, and you can board the ship. Everyone then bid farewell to the landlord, took their family members and followers, and so on, and boarded the 8-star battleship together. The 8-star battleship is very spacious, so there are people from other countries on it, a large piece of Blackbird, and tens of thousands less. People like Yi Ming got in there and couldn't find it. There were no places to sit in the cabin, and many people were standing, and more people were sitting at random places. Because the journey is long, there are still many countries to go to. When I return to the Nebula, I will say less than half a month later. And the earliest person to board the ship has even spent more than a month on it. Very boring. For this reason, when Yi Ming went up, he saw a bunch of people in the east and west, either chatting or gambling, and some people were bored to beat their wrists. Yi Ming and his group sat together. Soon after they sat down, someone came over and asked, how many of them are from the hegemony? The people who talked about it were 5 big and 3 rough, describing it as rude, and at first glance it was a ruthless role. Tizen Luo arched his hand. We are the hegemony, Your Excellency. The man smiled. Hey, we are from Shangyu. As soon as he heard that the other party was from Shangyu, Tizen Luo's face changed. The Shangyu country and the hegemonic country have always been at odds with each other, and the neighboring countries of the two countries often have frictions and even wars. Although it is only a small battle, the people of the two countries hate each other because of this. In other countries, if the people in the hegemony meet the people in Shangyu, they often have to fight. The man stared at Tizen Luo, and said, why, your hegemony would choose these 50 wastes. Yi Ming is actually not interested in talking to each other, but it is uncomfortable to say that he is a waste. He twisted his face and said, are there any asterisk in your mouth? It's so stinky to talk to him, get away. The man froze and became furious, screaming, boy, are you looking for death? I'm looking for you. It turns out you're shit. Yi Ming was surprised. It's strange to talk about shit. The man was hairy, stepped out, and the ship's board was shaken. Then, a gust of wind came, and the other party did not know what magic power was used. A dark claw suddenly slammed from behind Yi Ming. Yi Ming didn't turn his head back. With a single blow, the black claws were shaken into black smoke. The provocative man screamed, exploding one of his left palm, and the flesh and blood collapsed around him. Bold, who dares to fight here? Suddenly, a young man in a moon-white gown came over and asked everyone loudly, but his eyes fell on the man and Yi Ming. Yi Ming knew that this man must be in charge, and immediately said, "It was he who did nothing to me." The young man casually pulled out one person and asked, "Is he telling the truth?" The man was surprised. No matter how dare to lie, he nodded again and again. "Yes, this is Shang Shangguo's first shot." The young man reached for a finger, and the Shangyu people who blew up one hand suddenly became stiff, and somehow died of it. Yi Ming was looking at the score, and 12 microscopic needles penetrated the opponent's key points, causing his death on the spot. This silence, using micro needles to kill others, surprised him. He thought that although this kind of microneedles could not hurt him, it was really troublesome to deal with, and he could only use a bell jar or iron cloth shirt to keep it out. After killing the people in Shangyu, the young man said coldly, "Give me honest, otherwise this is an example." After that, he gave Yi Ming a stern look and turned away. As soon as the other party walked, the surrounding humanity said, "If you see nothing, that's a star disciple of Nebula. It's really prestigious. How many one-star disciples does Nebula teach? How many stars are the highest?" Yi Ming had limited knowledge of this nebula, and he asked people around him for advice. Probably it was the strength he had shown before, and because of this, a person from Shangyu country died. People nearby were kind to him and did not want to blame him. One said, "Although Nebula is said to be very large, the number of disciples is not large. The entire nebula only recruits 10,000 disciples from various worlds each year. But this 10,000 people have to undergo difficult training and trials. What can be left after 1 year is not even 1/10. That is to say, the number of disciples that Nebula teaches every year is less than 1,000. As for the number of disciples in the whole, it is confidential, and we cannot tell." Quote. The disciples of the Nebula religion have a status of more than 3 stars. As for disciples of 5 or more stars, it is said that they can directly serve as elders in the teaching, and can also go to various countries and dynasties to hold various senior official positions. The highest seems to be it is a 10-star disciple, and a 10-star disciple is more of a kind of glory and title. The entire Nebula teaching will always have only 3 10-star disciples. Quote. The disciple's star rating is related to Shu Wei and contribution. The greater the contribution to the nebula, the higher the star rating. Of course, if the Shu Yun is too bad, it is difficult to have great talents to contribute, so Shu Wei and star most of the time it is proportional. Quote. The other side was very detailed. While listening, Yi Ming gave him a few fruit to eat. When the man saw Yi Ming being so polite, his interest became very high, and said, "This buddy, Nebula is one of the few major forces in humankind. If we can join it, there will be no future." Speaking of this, he deliberately lowered his voice, and seemed to only want to speak to Yi Ming, but at the same time let the people around him hear it. "Hey, I heard that there isn't. Behind our Nebula religion, in fact, there is a strong patron. This patron is one of the great Protoss." Yi Ming raised his eyebrows and asked strangely, 3 Protoss? Didn't that say that the Protoss has been suppressing our people? How can we support a big force? That humanity. I do and know if my brother's body is the most perfect of all living beings, with infinite potential. So, the Protoss sometimes intermarries with our humans, giving birth to half-human deities. They descendants of the world have extraordinary achievements and have a very high status in the Protoss. Quote. Another couldn't help saying, "Your statement is too one-sided. The real reason is that the Protoss wants to indirectly control the development of human beings through the Nebula religion. The Protoss has always worried that humans will grow big, but they can't take all of them obliteration, so only by controlling the Nebula teaching such a powerful way to indirectly control the people." Quote. I don't think this statement is reliable. The third person said his own thoughts. The Protoss is so powerful. Do we need to beware of the Terrans as we are ants? I am afraid they are only for the sake of gaining benefits. Yes, but I have heard people say that most of the income of the nebula religion must be given to the Protoss. Quote. Yi Ming just listened and did not participate in the debate. In his opinion, the reasons that these people said should all exist. The Protoss would not simply support such a large force as Nebula, and there must be many considerations. In this way, Yi Ming communicated with people from different countries in Tian'an Hebei every day, but he knew a lot about the local customs and the situation of the nebulae. The time was not as long as originally expected. After about 7 days, the battleship sailed back to the nebulae. The youth before that appeared again in the cabin and ordered everyone to disembark. Out of the battleship, everyone fell on a huge square. Overhead, more than one battleship fell, and at least hundreds of thousands of people stood on the square. Soon, the selected candidates were divided into small groups, each with 1,000 people, led by the disciples of the nebulae, to go for the assessment. The leader of this group of Yi Ming is a star disciple of Nebula. He calmly said, "My name is Wang Jian, and the assessment behind you is guided by me. I set a few rules, and you must follow them. Whoever does not follow them, will be disqualified from becoming a Nebula disciple." Quote. Everyone dared not to say a word and listen to his rules. Wang Jiandao. Although you have come to the nebulae, they are not real disciples, so before the results of the assessment, you can't get away with it, and you can't conflict with anyone. Once you find it, get rid of it right away. Followers, family members, don't let them leave your sight. The last one, after the assessment results come out, those who are disqualified will immediately leave the nebula teaching, otherwise they will be killed. Quote. The king said something with great enthusiasm, and then his tone became mild, and said, "Okay, now go to the first test with me." The so-called first pass is actually the assessment of strength. Strength is always the first criterion for the strength of a constant monk. It is not just Nebula. When most forces evaluate their disciples, this is one of the first indicators. The assessment process was simple. Wang Jian took everyone to a cast iron monument, which was 10 meters high, 3 meters wide, and 1 meter thick. The inscription on the monument is densely packed, and the front side is marked with line by line. Yi Ming glanced. Seeing the inscription on the side, he understood that there are 3 scales above. The first line has the largest scale. One scale is the force of thousands of dragons, which is 1 trillion pounds of force. There are 10,000 scales on this line, which can reach 1 trillion pounds at most. The unit of the scale on the second line is 100 million kilograms, with a total of 99,999 divisions, which can reach a maximum of 999.9 billion kilograms. The scale on the third line is 10,000 kilograms, which also has 99,999 divisions, and the highest value is 99,999,000 kilograms. The king explained to everyone how to use it. Just need to punch with all one's strength, and the iron tablet will show how powerful the punch is. If the scale of the first grid cannot be lit, it will be eliminated directly. In other words, if the power is less than the power of Qianlong, it will not qualify as a disciple of Nebulae. This made Yi Ming somewhat surprised. You know, when he was promoted to Shengwu Sheng, he had just had the power of Qianlong. It can be seen that the requirements of the nebulae for recruiting disciples are really extremely high. Hundreds of thousands of people in this square are finally able to stay, and I am afraid that they are less than 10,000. Yi Ming's group has already started to participate in the test. When I saw the first person, I ran out of milk to make a punch, and gave a loud roar in his mouth. However, it was of no use. His punch only had a force of more than 100 billion kilograms, which was far from 1 trillion kilograms. Next, the second person, the third person, until the 367th person, none of them actually passed. Among them, the best score was only over 600 billion jin. The test requirements this time are too high. I clearly remember that the test standard last year was 300 billion kilograms. How did it become 1 trillion kilograms this year? Someone muttered in dissatisfaction behind. Wang Jian kept watching. No matter how bad others were, he would not comment. But at this time, he suddenly said, the senior executives of Nebula have just issued an order to raise the requirements for recruiting disciples this year. Not only the strength test standards have been improved, but other standards have also made great demands, so you must be mentally prepared. One group may not even pass by one person. Quote. Everyone's eyes were red, and someone asked, why do you want to raise the standard? How can Xingyan teach recruit students? Wang Jian faintly glanced at the questioner and said, it's okay to tell you. Those who pass the assessment this time will become 2-star disciples. What? Become a 2-star disciple? The crowd almost jumped up, but none of them were happy. They have not even become a 1-star disciple, let alone a 2-star disciple. I'm afraid this year is nothing. Yiming, what is the purpose of Nebula to do this? The king said lightly. If you can pass, I will answer your question. It is precisely the turn of Yiming. When he first entered Wushang, he could reach the power of Qianlong. Now, his strength has been increased thousands of times. He nodded and said, okay. Immediately came to the Iron Monument, did not urge Guiyuan Dajunli, let alone the power of the mysterious crystal, just a simple punch. Boom. The earth shook violently, as if it were an earthquake, which was caused by Yiming's force hitting the ground with his feet. The scale of the first line of the steel is madly up, 100, 1000, 3000, and finally fixed at 3875. 3,875 trillion kilograms. Wang Jian had a contemptuous expression on his face, and then he calmed down, the whole person was stunned. Yiming's outbreak of power. I am afraid that only disciples with more than 5 stars in the teaching can do it, and the 5-star disciples of Nebula have already had a lot of power in the longevity. He took a deep look at Yiming and said politely, brother is amazing and admirable. At this moment, he actually changed his name to Brother Yiming, which shows that he has concluded that Yiming can certainly become a 2-star disciple. Yiming's strength is too strong, and he can certainly become a real 2-star disciple. In the Nebula teaching, 1-star disciple must call the 2-star disciple a brother, and he will naturally change his tongue. Everyone down there continued to test their strength. Yiming said, now you can answer my previous question. Wang Jian quickly said, it's a brother. Brother asked why the Nebula teaching suddenly raised the test standard. The situation is this. The Nebula has accumulated over 100,000 years, and there has been no war in the past tens of thousands of years, and the loss is minimal, so the number of 1-star disciples has exceeded 10 million. However, the number of 2-star disciples is only 300,000. Therefore, the senior management of Nebula believes that there are too many 1-star disciples and too few 2-star disciples. Raising the standard in order to gradually reduce the number of 1-star disciples and increase the number of 2-star disciples. Of course, this is a long process, and it will take thousands of years to achieve results. Quote. Yiming nodded. That's the case. It seems that not many people who come to participate in the assessment today can stay. Yes, my brother. In fact, there is another reason for this selection to raise the standard. That is, some big families in the Nebula teaching have to choose and draft again, so they hope to choose some outstanding young ones. Come out. Quote. Wang said. Yiming knew that in every great religion, there would be some powerful families. Many of these families are teaching disciples and hold important positions. The more ancient the family, the greater the power in teaching. If these families want to remain strong, they must continue to inject fresh blood. Draft and selection are two of the best methods. Regardless of men and women, as long as they have potential and promising geniuses, they will become the first choice of these families. Speaking of this, Wang Jiandao said, the brothers' qualifications will certainly be seen by many families. The brother's suggestion is that the brother must be cautious. No matter how good the other party puts forward, we must first consider its background. Yiming couldn't help laughing, but he was here to see the daughter of the leader. What family can be compared with the leader of the Nebula? He said, thanks for reminding me, I understand. The assessment of this group ended soon, and as expected, only Yiming passed the assessment. 2 hours later, the square was full of people. At this moment, there are only more than 300 people. The 300 or so people were eventually gathered together and led by a Samsung disciple. This Samsung disciple, named Li Kang, should be the cultivation of Fuwang. He has a very good attitude and smiles at everyone. They were all there, and he said, with the release of the Master, no accident, half of you will become the core disciples of the nebula. Next, we will conduct the second assessment. Someone asked, Brother, how difficult is the second assessment than the first? It's more difficult, Li Kang said, only half of you should pass. Upon hearing only half of them, the expressions of everyone were rigid, and their hearts were tense. Li Kang continued. The second assessment is simpler. You just need to release the baby and pass the sea of fire in front of you. Then, pointing forward, there, I do not know when a portal appeared, the flames were so high, and I wondered where it was connected. Li Kang explained. This door leads to the sea of fire. In the sea of fire, there are many strange flames, specializing in the burning of the gods. Teachers and brothers, please be careful. After passing through the sea of fire, you can see the portal. Can return to the square. After that, the crowds lined up and rushed in. Yi Ming's ranking is relatively high. He is the first godlike figure to enter the portal and enter the sea of fire. I saw a cloud of chaos and rushed in. The others are released babies, which are quite different in shape from Yi Ming's, and their power cannot be compared with the same day. God shape entered the sea of fire. Yi Ming just felt slightly warm. He wasn't interested in staying too much and moved on at full speed. However, soon after the flight, fire dragons flew from the ground, including purple, blue, white, red, etc. Hunting him down everywhere. Fire dragons of different colors seem to represent different flames, and their killing characteristics are also different. Regardless of his 37 to 21, he directly sacrificed the sword mark of the sky, and swept away when he opened it. How could these fire dragons withstand his strength? They exploded, turned into Martian sky, and fell. He is a man who has undergone the transformation of the gods of the heavens. The primordial ***** is so strong that these flames can't hurt him at all in this way. I don't know how many fire dragons were killed along the way, and he finally saw a portal and rushed out. At this time, it was only a quarter of an hour before he entered the sea of fire. At the exit of the portal, several Nebula disciples were chatting. In their expectations, the first person who came out would have taken 2 hours. After all, the fire dragon inside was not easy to deal with. But after a few words of conversation, they saw a god-shaped charge burst out, and the momentum was shaking, which was Yi Ming. As soon as Yi Ming came out, the divine form returned to the flesh. He fisted at several disciples. Several brothers, I am out. These people were surprised, and Li Kang said, Master, you are really amazing. For hundreds of years, I still see people who passed through the sea of fire in such a short time, and it is an enhanced sea of fire. Yi Ming. Brother Li, what is the third assessment? There are only 2 assessments, and you have passed. Li Kang laughed. The qualifications of the younger brother are really amazing. Presumably there will be many families coming to grab people. You must be prepared. Yi Mingyi said. Grab someone. That's right. Your grades will be spread soon. Some families, noble officials and nobles, will want to put you in the house and be your son-in-law. Li Kang told them kindly, at that time, there may be a long life to come forward. Robbery, you better not resist. Go back and talk to them slowly. Yi Ming was speechless for a while. How can marriage be strong? He immediately asked, Brother Li, what should I do next? You are already a disciple of the 2 stars, go to report now, and then receive the waste card and the cost of the first year. Then, take Yi Ming to the place where he reports, an ancient hall. There is nothing special about registering, just the process of recording audio and video qualifications and registering. It is worth mentioning that Yi Ming's waist card was actually similar to the merit ring he had before, and it contained a lot of information, including credit. The credit of the Nebula teaching is quantified in points, and a little credit can be exchanged for a long-lived coin. There are many ways to get credit, such as beheading the demon, finding elixir for the nebula, and even repairing for breakthroughs, rising stars, and so on. After getting what he needed, he came out of the hall, and Li Kang took Yi Ming to a place where he lived. The town is small, with only 6 two-star disciples living in it. In addition, it is a class of servants of Yahuan who are responsible for the daily life of 6 two-star disciples, and so on. There are countless small towns like this. Of course, if it is a Samsung disciple or a 4-star disciple, they will live in a larger place, and it may be a large town or even a county seat. As for the 5-star disciples, they often own a city, and the people in the city serve them. As soon as Yi Ming's people arrived in the town, Mo Yidao and Lianer followed. The yard he lived in was large, herds of servants, and respectful to them. Yi Ming handed everyone over to Lear, and he began to consider how to become a 5-star disciple as soon as possible. As for the 5-star disciples of the Nebula religion, he knows that most of them are the 9 strongest in France, or even the power of longevity. If he wants to become a 5-star disciple, it is very difficult. However, he learned from the mouths of Wang Jian and Li Kang that the Nebula teaching has a fair set of assessment standards. The higher the training, the less difficult it is to become a high-star disciple. Also participating in the assessment of 5-star disciples, Changsheng Yijing may need to reach twice the standard to pass. The disciples of France and 9, they only need to meet the double standard to successfully pass. If Yi Ming wants to become a 5-star disciple, he must go step by step. He must first become a Samsung disciple, then a 4-star disciple, and finally enter the 5-star disciple. Even if he kept going through all these processes non-stop, it would take more than a month. However, before he started to take the 3-level assessment, trouble came to his door. First, the other 5 brothers in the town came to congratulate them. These 5 people were all from the 5 realms. They didn't say a few words, and the door was knocked open. Here it is. Yi Ming was shocked at the moment, knowing that the evil forces who had been recruited appeared, and he quickly pushed Mo Dao and said, "Old Mo, you have to stop for a while." Mo Yidao stopped, and asked, "I'm going to stop. How to stop?" Yi Ming. "Just say you are me and let them take you away." Mo Yidao bit his face bitterly. "Isn't this good? I was discovered afterwards, and it took me a long time to beat. I can't take it anymore." Yi Ming sneered. "Old Mo, the host said before I came, I was responsive. Why, you don't agree with my little request? If you do, how can I be the god-in-law?" Mo Dadao didn't dare to bear such a blame. As soon as he gritted his teeth, he rushed out. Yi Ming looked at the excitement in the distance, and when Mo Yidao went out, as soon as his identity was revealed, several long-lived men shot with great power and directly took people away. There were even 2 long-lived men who were able to fight in order to grab people and leveled half the town. Watching Mo Yidao screaming to be taken away, Yi Ming wiped his cold sweats, and said to the children, "It seems that this place should not be stayed for a long time, let's go out and hide for a few days before talking." Ray clapped her hands and said, "Okay, I know a place, it should be very suitable." Yi Mingqi said, "You know. Have you ever been to the Nebula continent?" Lianer laughed. "Of course not. I said by the servants that Nebula teaches that it has built many inns, which are expensive for outsiders, but people in the churches live very cheaply. And the luxury there is much stronger than here. If you don't want to be disturbed, it's best to go there." Yi Ming's eyes brightened, and he smiled. "Yes, you thoughtful, let's go now." Without even giving a word to the servants, Yi Ming hurriedly took the pity. Just a few hundred miles away, they found a city where they opened a Nebula Inn. This inn is a Samsung Inn. The higher the star rating, the better the service and environment. In addition, Samsung Inn is completely free for disciples of Samsung and above, and also offers great discounts for disciples below Samsung. For example, Yi Ming, the cost of his guest house is 30% off of ordinary people, and everything is free. The inn is very large, and there are many yards in it, among which the best yards are all occupied. Yi Ming can only choose a high-end one. But even so, the yard is bigger than he was assigned, and there are many servants. They are all handsome girls, handsome boys, and they are very polite and thoughtful, very trained. As soon as Yiming set foot, someone knocked on the courtyard door. Por opened the door and exclaimed, "Uncle, it's the messenger of the nebula." Nebula teaches messengers. Yiming was very surprised. He remembered that Mo Yidao talked about his son-in-law last time and mentioned the nebula messenger. When he came to the nebula continent, he also asked specifically that the nebula messenger is at least a 5-star disciple, and he has a very prominent position in nebula teaching, and is extremely popular. Numerous people have broken his head and wanted to do it. The messenger of the nebula had been invited to the living room by Yi, and as soon as Yiming came out, he saw a young man sitting there waiting for him. He clenched his fists and said, "I've seen the messenger of the nebula. What's the advice of the messenger here?" The messenger stood up, looked at Yiming, and asked lukewarmly, "Are you Yiming?" Yiming: "Yes, messenger. I'm the nebula messenger. I came to tell you that after you become a 5-star disciple, I will help you enter the nebula house. Xingyan Mansion is the residence of the priest. The people who can go there to do things are the worst 5-star disciples." Yiming narrowed his eyes. "I have a question. Which side does the messenger represent, Madam Han?" The messenger sank. "You are not qualified to ask questions now." Yiming sneered at once. "That being the case, I will return to the Tianyuan continent tomorrow. This nebula disciple will not do it." The messenger looked cold and scolded. "Childish, do you know how deep the water is in it? If you go back, the emperor can't protect you." Yiming suddenly laughed. "It seems that your excellency should be the messenger of Madam Han." The messenger now understood that Yiming's previous words were lying to him. As for how he inferred that the man behind him was Madam Han, even he was confused. Where does he understand that the third-order chaos can use the information of a star and a half-point to infer the greatest possibility? Yiming didn't mean it either, he just felt that this was the most likely. After he said it, the messenger was surprised, and he knew that his judgment was correct. "You are really cunning." The messenger sighed, but he appreciated Yiming a little. "Yiming, please don't blame the messenger. I don't want to be an uninformed chess piece. Even if I am a chess piece, I want to be an understanding person. Even if the messenger doesn't say it, I also know that this matter is related to the power struggle of the nebulae." The messenger said, "Whatever you say. Yiming, I haven't asked your name yet. I have ordered someone to set down the banquet, and please also appreciate it." As soon as the messenger's heart moved, the ghosts were terrified, and he had the idea of associating with Yiming, and nodded, "So I'm disturbed. My name is Hua Zidong, a 6-star disciple of the nebulae. Por's efficiency is very high, and within a moment, there is a table full of wine and wine on the table. Yiming pours the wine in person and laughs. "Brother Hua, my younger brother came to the nebula continent. Although I was standing in the aura of being a visiting son-in-law, I knew in the end that this matter was likely to be empty. Maybe Mrs. Han invited 10 or 100 people like me, I don't know if they are." Hua Zidong loved wine when he didn't practice, and he was half drunk. Later repaired as a master, naturally 1,000 cups are not drunk. But the wine that Yiming gave him was not anything, but the wine that even drunk the longevity. So after Hua Zidong had a drink, his tongue became big. "Brother." His face was red, and his tone of politeness became very affectionate. "You are so smart. Yes, there are 56 people invited to be the goddess son-in-law like you, and they all has entered the nebulae." Yiming nodded. 56 people, and all of them are geniuses. In the end, how can 1 or 2 meet the conditions, which is favored by the young lady? That's it. Grandma Chigu already knows the nature of the young lady, and she likes your brother. Even if she doesn't like you, she will like other people. Hua Zidong said with a big tongue. "Grandma Aunt Chi, is she Madam Han?" Yiming looked bright and asked with a smile. Hua Zidong said, "Of course. Grandma Chi Aunt is the 7th sister of the founder, named Nangong Feian, which is highly regarded by the founder." Yiming. Mrs. Han's marriage to Miss Shin's heart must have some plans. Even though Hua Zidong was drunk, he was still agitated in his heart, saying, I really don't know about this. Piao who pours wine, laughed. I heard people say that Grand Aunt Chi's daughter is going to be an adult, and she wants to marry a Protoss. However, there is a young lady, and she has no chance. As soon as Hua Zidong heard someone say that little bit of clarity in his heart was gone, and he smiled. I didn't expect that you, a little girl, would understand these things. Yi Yi is really not short of talents. Yi Ming was a little weird, and he didn't understand who was listening to. He said, Grandma Aunt Chi wants to marry her daughter to the Protoss, so she asked Luo to find her son-in-law. Hua Zidong laughed. This is only the first reason. You must not think of the second reason. Oh, is there a second reason? Yi Ming became interested. What is it? The young lady is so fond of the leader, some people worry that the church will pass on her. Hua Zidong said this, and suddenly shut up, and seemed to realize that he shouldn't tell the matter. Piao Er's eyes flashed thoughtfully. Yi Ming also wanted to ask something, and Hua Zidong suddenly got up and said, Brother, I still have something to do, and I have to say goodbye. Before Yi Ming stayed, he walked away. As soon as Hua Zidong left, Yi Ming looked at Lear and asked, Lear, where did you hear what you said just now? Wei Er smiled. I was bullshit, and deliberately lied to him, but I didn't expect to be right. Yi Ming did not know whether the letter was true, nodded, and said nothing. Poor blinked, and said, What does uncle do next? Yi Ming. What else can you do? Mrs. Han chose 56 people, presumably each of them is highly qualified, and I may not be able to go to the last step. Doesn't Grandpa want to be the leader-in-law? Li Er asked with a smile. Yi Ming. What about the godmother and son-in-law? That position sounds good, but in fact it is extremely cold from the heights. I'm here for the Nebula mainland, just to deal with it. But it's not that uncle hasn't gained anything. You are already a disciple of Nebula. Lianer said. Yi Ming stared at her suddenly and asked, Who the **** are you? As if she was so scared, she suddenly became red-eyed and cried, Why is uncle suddenly so fierce to him? Yi Ming sneered. I knew you weren't ordinary in the morning, but I didn't expect you to be related to Mrs. Han. Was it you that she was sent undercover? Poorly said. What did the uncle say? I don't know Mrs. Han. Then she stomped her head and walked away. Yi Ming chased out, but where is the shadow of Piao Er? He was taken aback, man. Apparently, Yi Ming was gone. Yi Ming suddenly felt empty around him. He murmured, Who is she, who has been with me for so long? Is she really undercover? The next day, Mo Yidao returned to the inn. Yi Ming saw that the nose and face was swollen, and he was obviously beaten. Mo sat down with a stab, and hated, These people really don't make sense. I made it clear that I wasn't you, and sent me into the cavern. It didn't happen that I was so enthusiastic. On me I'm also a man, he half pushed and half sleeped. Yi Ming was startled. You slept someone. Then, Mo Yidao sighed. The woman is really beautiful, I can't hold it for a while, and I can't blame me later. She knows that I really aren't you, and actually called a group of people to kill me. Alas, this woman didn't miss me at all. That's good. That night, I didn't put a lot of effort into using all my skills. Yi Ming was not interested in knowing what Mo Yidao's unique skill was, and he laughed. Lao Mo, you are old and strong. Mo Yidao looked serious, and said, Brother Yi, although I was beaten on this trip, it was not unreasonable. I heard that family said that the legendary school wanted to recruit people in Nebula. I don't know why. Not to be seen by legendary universities, this time recruiting people, but never before. Yi Ming. But what does this have to do with me? I want to teach in the Nebula, not to the Legendary Academy. Mo Yidao. Of course it is related. For nearly 10,000 years, no one in Nebula has entered the Legendary School. If you can go in, it is a great honor, and the senior Nebulae will treat you differently. Yi Mingqi said. The Nebula teaches geniuses like clouds, how can no one enter the Legendary School? Mo Yidao. Brother, you do and know, because the nebula religion relies on the Protoss, and the high level of the legendary school despise it. Therefore, two sets of standards have been instituted. Nebulism joins the legendary school and must pass a severe test. This leads for nearly 10,000 years. None of them passed the test. Yi Ming. Since the standards are strict, why should I go for fun? Just going to participate, and there is no loss. Mo Yidao said, what if you passed? When Yi Ming moved, he was going to join the legendary school when he was the crown prince. But at that time he had not yet achieved Valkyrie, and things were delayed. Now he cannot use the identity of the crown prince, and this legendary school is not easy to enter. Now the opportunity has come. Once successful, he is bound to become the first person in the nebula teaching for thousands of years, which is very attractive to him. After coming to Nebula, he didn't really have any idea about visiting son-in-law. Instead, he felt that joining Nebula was really good. Compared to the Temple of Immortality, the power of the nebulae is greater. Since there is an intention to develop something in the nebulae, it would be a beautiful thing to have such glory. So after some consideration, he decided to try it. As Mo Yidao said, even if it is unsuccessful, it is a waste of a few days at most, and has no bad influence. Seeing Yi Ming promise to come down, Mo Yidao said, Brother, the legendary school set down the stage at the gate of Xingyan Mansion, but so far, only 3 people dare to try, but they have failed without exception. If you can succeed, it will surely attract the attention of the leader. And I heard people say that the Nebula leader secretly ordered that if anyone can pass the test of the legendary school, he will be accepted as a disciple. Quote. Yi Mingyi, does the Nebula still accept disciples? The Nebula is a stranger. He has too many requirements for apprenticeships, so he has no apprentices yet. But since he has released such words, he will certainly not break his word. Brother, if you are a disciple of the founder, you might as well be the daughter of the founder. So good. Quote. Yi Ming, I'm afraid it's not that easy. But now that you've made a decision, you don't have to think too much. Let's talk about it later. The next day, Mo Yidao and Yi Ming appeared at the gate of Xingyan Mansion. As rumored, a golden table was set up at the gate of Nebula. This table has 9 floors, higher than the tallest building in Xingyan province. On that table stood a young man, eyes closed, motionless. There were countless people watching the crowd around the stage, but the stage was deserted, and no one dared to enter the stage at all. After Yi Ming arrived, he didn't rush to the stage. Just listening to someone saying, well, we are so ashamed of the Nebula teaching, the other person came to this person, hey, no one can beat him. Yi Ming approached and asked, Brother, what is the origin of this person? The other person was about depressed, and said without a second thought, he is the heir to the legendary school, saying that as long as people in the same realm can defeat him, he can join the legendary school. Yi Ming glanced at it. The person on the stage should be Fa Yijing, and said strangely, it should not be difficult for Fa Tianyi to be in the realm. Is it true that no one can beat him? The man squinted at Yi Ming and said, what do you know? This man is known as the first genius of the legendary school for thousands of years. The reason why the legendary school sent him to actually recruit any disciples is to humiliate the nebulae. Quote. Yi Ming, it doesn't make sense. We nebulas haven't defended the legendary school, why did they do it? The man immediately lowered his voice and said, it seems that you haven't joined the nebula for long, right? The family of the legendary school was a nun, and we had a relationship with the master in that year. But I don't know why, the two were separated. Then women love to hate because of love, and even hate us with Nebula. Quote. Yi Mingqi said, how do you know such a confidential thing? The man smiled, hey, it's not a secret thing. I don't know much about it. Yi Ming stayed awake, but never thought it was the reason. It seems that the woman's hatred is extremely deep, otherwise she would not do so absolutely. He looked at the people on the stage, and suddenly he leaned forward and flew up. The young man on the stage had been sitting side by side with his eyes closed, and seemed to be meditating and adjusting his breath. After Yi Ming came up, he didn't open his eyes, he couldn't help himself, but asked lightly, who is coming, report your name. Yi Ming. The nebula teaches two disciples, Yi Ming. Who is your excellency? The young man was quite heroic. When he waved his hand, a mighty force came along. However, as soon as this force reached Yi Ming, it was consumed by a more powerful force. This time, the young man finally opened his eyes, glanced at Yi Ming, and smiled. It's interesting, you are now entitled to know my name. My name is Yunfeng, a disciple at the Legendary Academy. Yi Ming. It turned out to be an undead person. I've seen Ji Yumingkong and Qinglian before, and you must know them, too. The young man was somewhat surprised and looked at Yi Ming and said, these two are my brothers, and both are disciples in the undead house. Yi Ming smiled. I heard that if you can beat you can join the legendary school. Yunfeng nodded. Yes. I also heard people say that you are the first genius in the legendary school for 10,000 years. Yi Ming asked again. Yunfeng smiled. Hee, that's the ridicule of others, and I don't dare to be. Yi Ming said. At least, the strongest of your legendary school, Fatian. I just happened to break through to Wushan realm, and our cultivation is equivalent. At this point, there has been much discussion in the audience. When Yi Ming first came to power at first, everyone felt that he had gone up and humiliated him. After all, the people who went up before were all famous geniuses taught by Nebula. Those people have failed. How can Yi Ming, a little-known man, win? They thought Yi Ming would be beaten as soon as he went up. However, I did not expect that Yunfeng, who always looked down on any challenger, had looked down on him for a long time, and seemed to attach great importance to Yi Ming without any lightness. In a short time, this situation was sent out, and the leaders of the major forces, including the Nebula leader, knew the situation. Above the platform, there were suddenly a few more clouds. Behind the clouds, there were dozens of eyes watching below, and the masters of the eyes were all giants. Yi Ming didn't know all of this. From the moment he came to power, his lord was quietly operating the true power of Yuan, and even fully opened all the effects of the Ruyi robe. The man in front of him, but the genius of the Legendary Academy, never dare to underestimate, he must challenge him with the strongest means. Yunfeng smiled at this moment and said, Brother Yi, I wonder if you want to fight or fight. Yi Ming asked calmly, what about Wendo? What about martial arts? Yunfeng. If you fight, you will be killed with a real sword. If we are fighting, we can compare chess, painting, and playing the piano. Anyway, you can choose. Yi Ming thought for a while, and said, I don't understand painting, I don't know how to play the piano, but I know a little bit about playing chess, so let's play chess first, and then fight, what do you think? The following people heard that Yi Ming was going to play chess with Yunfeng. Many people were anxious. Some people shouted, well, are you crazy? Yunfeng has the title of Chess Emperor. At the legendary school, even growing up no one can be your opponent. Why would you play chess with him? Quote. Yi Ming turned a deaf ear. The two sat down with a chessboard in the middle. Your son, Yi Ming said lightly. Yunfeng smiled. Thank you very much. Yi Ming followed the set, and both were very fast. In the blink of an eye, dozens of sets had been dropped on the chessboard. After that, their speed gradually slowed down. Yunfeng has felt Yi Ming's wisdom is very powerful, and smiled. Did Yi also have learned Tai Divinity? Yi Ming. I heard that Tai Divine Art is a basic course of a legendary school. I wonder what level you have reached, Brother Yun. Yunfeng laughed. My understanding is not good, only to the 9 yuan calculation array. Yi Ming. 9 yuan calculation is already the limit, how do you say that your understanding is not good? Yunfeng. Is Brother Yi not aware that there are 10 yuan on top of the 9 yuan calculation? Yi Ming laughed. My 10 yuan abacus array is not Tai Divine Art, but Chaos Abacus. Yunfeng said for a moment. Brother Yi has learned the chaos, and I don't know how many. Yi Ming. I only learned one. Yunfeng laughed. Different talents, I have studied 3. Yi Ming nodded. Have you learned 3 books? It seems your chaos has reached the 2nd order. Yunfeng. I don't have enough understanding, otherwise I should be able to see the 3rd order. Yi Ming also dropped a son. My perception is also average, only one order higher than you. Yunfeng Luozi shook his hand slightly. He looked up at Yi Ming. The third order of chaos scripture, how did Brother Yi do this? It's all about understanding. The implication of this statement is that your understanding is not as good as mine, and you can ask for nothing. Yunfeng. Admire. With admiration on his mouth, but his chess path became more fierce, Yi Ming had to fight with all his strength. Halfway through the game, Yi Ming has realized that it is difficult for him to win in this game. However, in his mind, he suddenly remembered playing against Han Juyin. In terms of calculations, he is not under Han Juyin, but he was defeated, and he was defeated by momentum and realm. Thinking of this, his chess style changed, as if the wind was drizzling, and the moisten was silent, without any murder. Yunfeng laughed. Is Brother Yi trying to admit defeat? Playing chess is like a fight, indecision is about to lose. Yi Ming smiled and said nothing. After 10 steps, Yunfeng couldn't laugh anymore. He felt an invisible force that suppressed his performance. But he clearly calculated and did nothing. What went wrong? Another 10 steps. His sweat had been seen on his forehead, and his expression was so dignified that it would take a long time to think about it. Above a cloud, there were two people sitting, a girl who looked like a fairy and a middle-aged man with a smile. The middle-aged man's temperament is not under the emperor. He smiled slightly and said, Vivi, do you think this kid will win? The girl was the woman who appeared in the Wushan Valley of the Tianyuan continent, the daughter of the Nebula leader. The middle-aged man is undoubtedly the master of the Nebula. The girl snorted. He's just a fool. The disciples of the legendary school can do the best. He actually plays chess with others. The middle-aged man smiled. I don't think so. Maybe he has the confidence to defeat Yunfeng. The girl pinched her mouth. Daddy, Yunfeng was a disciple taught by that woman, and it was sent to shame our Nebula. The middle-aged person said lightly, it's her. Girl. Dad just let that woman. The middle-aged sighed softly. I owe her. Girl. But if Yi Ming can't win him, what is the Nebula teaching face? Middle-aged. Vivi, you just said he was a fool, why do you have hope for him now? I have hope for him. Who said? He's just a fool. The girl sneered. If not, why don't you go to the Tianyuan continent and follow him for so long? Does my daughter, the Grand Master of the Nebula, like to be a niece for others? The middle-aged asked jokingly. The girl looked awkward and said angrily, how did Dad know? Aunt Yun told you. I know more. The middle-aged man snorted. He just snorted and said, Yunfeng lost. Yunfeng did lose, although he could support dozens of steps, but that was meaningless, so he simply gave up. I lost. He pushed away the chessboard, looking calm. Yi Ming, assignee, I'm actually not better than you, but luck is better. I played against one person and was inspired by it. Yunfeng, I lost anyway. But I'm not convinced and want to fight you. Yes. Yi Ming stood up. I will accompany you to whatever you want. Although playing chess was better than the opponent, he had a strong will in his heart and wanted to play against him. Previously he was better than the solitary empty space of the undead house, but the gap between the two sides was too big, which made him inevitably feel a sense of loneliness. He thought very much that a master of the same level who was strong enough to compete with him would have a good fight, even if he lost. Yunfeng smiled and said, I'm a man of Shandao, and I'm training Shenwu. Yi Ming read through the 24 civilizations, and naturally knew that there was a side branch under the Immortal Road, which was the Immortal. Shenwu is a martial art developed on the basis of Shandao. Compared with the martial arts in Tianyuan mainland, it can be said that it is unique. I am practicing martial arts, and I am about to meet your immortal martial arts. Yi Ming held his fist and saw the ceremony, using the number of martial arts. Yunfeng reciprocated, saying, although I am from Shenwu, I have always felt that the pattern of Shenwu is too small, and I am stuck with Shandao. So 10 years ago, I went to Tianyuan to travel and benefited a lot. I just want to fight with you with pure martial arts. Quote. Yi Ming, haha, laughed. I have this intention, please. The next moment, two people moved at the same time, one with a fist and the other with a palm. Yi Ming didn't even show the true power of returning to the Yuan dynasty, nor did he use Ruyi robes, but purely used his life to learn the lively battle. From the outsider's point of view, the moves of the two are ordinary, nothing special. The movements were not as fast as they could be, and they couldn't see much power in one move. But even so, the expressions of both men were extremely dignified and serious, and they seemed to be welcoming their enemies in life. Above the clouds, the Nebula leader praised. Good boxing, good palm. Girl. Dad, you rarely praise others. The future of martial arts may be opened on these two boys. The Nebula master smiled. Fortunately, Yi Ming is already a disciple of my Nebula. The girl's eyes turned. Daddy, I used to let go if anyone beats Yunfeng, you will accept who is a disciple. Is this true? Will there be a fake? If that person can defeat Yunfeng, it means that his qualifications are still above Yunfeng. When she accepted Yunfeng as an apprentice, I was also present, and always regretted that I started late. Now I can take it Yi Ming, it's God's compensation to me. The Nebula leader laughed, and seemed to be in a good mood. The girl glanced at. The two are of equal strength, and they are not willing to fight each other for life. It is difficult for anyone to win. The words did not end. Yi Ming and Yunfeng took a step back. They looked at each other, worshipped at the same time, and said in unison, "Thank you." After talking, the two looked at each other and laughed, feeling regretful. Brother Yi, we have no victory or defeat in martial arts. But you won in Wendo, so you defeated me. Yunfeng was very chic, admitting defeat on the spot. Yi Ming. It's Yunfeng's assignment. If I just fight with my life, I have no advantage. Yunfeng laughed. Brother Yi, don't be polite anymore. I won't accept anyone in your life, you are the first. I am not talented. Today, I would like to form a golden orchid with Yi Shang. I wonder if Yi Shang would like to. Yi Ming didn't really feel cold about worshipping his brother. When his father Yi Zuwei and Wu Shihao worshipped, it turned out to be indifferent. However, he really felt about Yunfeng, and he did not hesitate to say, Brother Yun doesn't disapprove, my brother is high. The two sides did not even care about the people present, nor did they burn incense, and they knelt on the spot and became brothers of different names. Yi Ming was half a year old and brother. Yunfeng was half a year old and brother. Brother. After the narrative, Yunfeng bowed down to Yi Ming. Yi Ming lifted him up and laughed. Brother. The people in the audience are all stupid. The two of them were still fighting just now on the clouds. The Nebula leader seemed even happier, and said, Vivi, let's go, see this boy. Yi Ming was about to take Yunfeng to drink 3,000 cups, and suddenly a Nebula disciple jumped onto the stage and laughed. Master Yi Ming, the leader has invited me. Yunfeng took Yi Ming's hand and said, Brother, I'm going to the legendary school to report to Master. If you have time, you can report to the school. We will not only be brothers, but we will be the same. Yi Ming. Okay, brother, please go back first, I will pass by soon. Yunfeng nodded, set to walk, and walked up. People disappeared, and I didn't know what martial art was used, which was very subtle. Yi Ming followed the man into Xingyan Mansion and into a hall. There was a middle-aged man sitting in the hall, and next to it was a girl. The middle-aged man's temperament makes people feel heartbroken. Yi Ming's feeling seems to be still above the emperor, and it is not weaker than the three emperors. The young girl was extremely beautiful and of good temperament, more than any woman he had ever seen. But somehow, he always felt familiar with the girl, and seemed to have seen it somewhere. He didn't think too much, and went to worship as soon as he entered the hall. Yi Ming, disciple, see the Lord, Wan Fu Jinan. The middle-aged man is the master of the nebula. He saw Yi Ming in the sky for a long time and was very satisfied with him. He laughed now. No need to be polite, get up and talk. Yes. Yi Ming stood up and stood there respectfully. Nebula leader. Yi Ming, you are from the Tianyuan continent. I don't know where the teacher is. Yi Ming. Muslim master, the disciples are descendants of the Immortal Temple, and have now joined the Valkyrie Valley. The Nebula leader was even more satisfied, saying, "The naval god Valley is supported by my Nebula religion. It seems that you were not an outsider before. The Immortal Temple is also somewhat famous, but it has declined in recent years. I once told people that if anyone can defeat Yunfang, I will accept it as an apprentice. Do you have a master before? Would you like to worship me?" The Nebula leader asked with a smile. Yi Ming said, "The disciples once had a master, but it was just a victim. It is the blessing of the disciples to worship the master, and the disciples are extremely willing to do so." When he finished worshipping, the Nebula leader, haha, smiled and said to the girl, "Vivi, you know it." The girl snorted and said, "Your name is Yi Ming." Yi Ming lowered his head. "Yes. Do you know who I am?" The girl asked. Yi Ming, "I don't know." The girl pinched her lips. "I'm the one you want to marry, the daughter of the Nebula Lord. But you can call me sister later." Yi Ming froze, and said to his heart, "How old you were. Actually, let me call your sister." But in the presence of the Nebula leader, he didn't say this, but he obediently called, "Sister." "Brother, since you are calling my sister, can you do me a favor?" The girl asked with a grin, and this smile made Yi Ming's hair fragile. What did the sister say? Yi Ming asked cautiously. The young girl said lightly, "I have offended someone. Go and kill him." Yi Ming Yi. Kill. Who is the other person? How did you offend the sister? You don't have to worry about it. You just kill people, said the young girl. He lives on the south of Xingyan Street and runs a high-rise inn called Jin Gaosheng. Yi Ming nodded. Okay, I'll kill. After that, he turned and left. When Yi Ming leaves the hall, Nebula teaches, "Aren't you embarrassing Wei Wei? Jin Gaosheng is the three realms of longevity, and you will definitely suffer here." The girl snorted. Who made him fierce to me before? Yi Ming came out of Xingyan Mansion and went straight to Gaosheng Inn. This Gaosheng Inn has a good business and many people come and go. When he was in the store, he asked, "Who is the boss of Jin Gaosheng?" A chubby middle-aged person came out and laughed. "I am." The guest officer was introduced by an acquaintance. "Would you like to live in the restaurant?" Yi Ming sneered. "I don't live in the shop, I'm here to kill you." Jin Gaosheng stunned. "You kill me?" He looked at Yi Ming up and down, showing a strange expression. In his eyes, Yi Ming is just a small person in the rank of Fatn, who wants to kill him. The power of longevity, is it frustrated? He suddenly laughed and stared coldly at Yi Ming. "Why did you kill me?" "We have revenge." "No revenge," Yi Ming said. "Have complaints." "No complaints," Yi Ming said lightly. "Someone asked me to kill you." "Who?" "The daughter of the Nebula leader," Yi Ming said. Jin Gaosheng's face changed greatly and he shouted, "Nonsense, the young lady was the one who I grew up watching. She would kill me. And even if I were like that, how could I send you such a person?" After hearing this, Yi Ming knew the relationship between the other party and the daughter of the Nebula. The two were acquaintances, and the relationship was still very good. To contact this person again is the power of longevity. He can already conclude that the other party is just teasing him and asking him to come over and suffer. After understanding this, he sighed. "So, I can't kill you at all. The reason why the young lady asked me to come is just to let you teach me a meal." Jin Gaosheng laughed. "You offended the young lady, and deserve to suffer." After that, he drew it with a slap. Yi Ming turned to the side and was beaten on his shoulder. After landing, he spit out blood and was slightly injured. Jin Gaosheng stunned. "Yeah. You are not seriously injured, but your body is solid." He was about to strike a second time, and suddenly felt a numbness in the arm, which could not move at once. He changed his face and called, "Poison on your shoulder." Yi Ming said lightly, "A strange poison that can poison the power of longevity. If you do not detoxify in half a quarter of an hour, you will definitely die." Jin Gaosheng said angrily, "It's daring." He walked to grab Yi Ming, but he flew halfway, and popped, and fell to the ground with pain. "You're going to die, I can go back to make a business." Yi Ming said coldly, turning and leaving. "Stop. I don't know when the young lady has appeared in the inn. She glanced at Jin Gaosheng and ordered, detoxify him. Yi Ming didn't ask why, handed over the antidote quickly, and stood aside silently. The young lady was in a bad mood. She had wanted to use the hand of Jin Gaosheng to teach Yi Ming. However, she knew that Yi Ming had taught Jin Gaosheng a meal and forced her to show up. Is there anything else I have ordered you to do? Yi Ming asked her angrily and honestly. The young lady gritted her silver teeth and said, "You seem very proud." Yi Ming's face was bewildered. Pride? What the young lady is talking about, my master doesn't understand. The appearance of his outfit made the young lady angry with stomachache, and said angrily, "Get out." Yi Ming really lay on the ground and got out. However, he rolled quickly and used the puppet technique and disappeared in a second. Jin Gaosheng's poison had been resolved, and he suddenly, laughed. The young lady gave him a stern glance. "Old slave, just now I should have let you die." Jin Gaosheng shut his mouth quickly, and did not dare to laugh, and said, "Miss, would you like to teach him a slave?" The young lady waved her hand. "I don't need to care about you, I can't spare him." Leaving the inn, Yi Ming returned to Xingyan Mansion. He now worshipped the Nebula Master as a teacher, presumably the other party had something to say. Sure enough, when he returned, the Nebula Lord gave him a large metal ring with a slap, saying, "This is a ring of heaven and earth, with a large space in it, which can be used to store things. In addition, it is not a weapon, and its power is acceptable." Yi Ming took Qian Kunwan and thanked each other. "I saw a lot of things inside." The Nebula leader explained. "This Chenkin ring was used for the teacher's early practice. The contents inside it were also collected when I was young and will be sent to you. Presumably this is the ceremony. Thank you, Yi Ming." "Yi Ming, although I accept you as a disciple, you must not claim to be a disciple before you enter the long life." Yi Ming. "Yes, the disciples understand. Go back, you are teaching business as usual in the nebula." The other waved his hand and motioned Yi Ming to retreat. Coming out of Nebula House again, Yi Ming returned directly to where he lived. Mo Yidao was anxious for a long time. Yi Ming could enter the Nebula House, but he did not dare to enter. So when he saw Yi Ming, he asked, "Is there a reward for the nebula?" Yi Ming knew that he couldn't conceal the matter, so he told the truth. Mo Yidao said in surprise, "So, Brother Yi, you really have a chance to become a son-in-law." Yi Ming smiled bitterly. "The young lady seems to have an opinion on me, what you say is impossible." Mo Yidao smiled and said, "If there is calmness between men and women, it will be even less fun. If you are busy, I will be optimistic." Yi Ming stopped talking about this and asked, "Lao Mo, I have now entered the Nebula House and have already completed 2 steps. Is it time to approach the young lady?" Mo Yidao shook his head. "Not in a hurry. You just need to stay in Nebula teaching steadily, and then say it to a 5-star disciple. The Nebula leader will definitely begin to test people in the near future." "Test me? Yi Ming, does he suspect that I am a spy? What a powerful force Nebula is as a teacher, he can't just accept his apprentices casually. When he publicly says that you are his apprentice, he truly believes in you." Mo Yidao said, "But that's okay. You are very clean. He can't find out." Yi Ming frowned. "How can I be considered clean? Is there a connection between me and Mrs. Han? If I was known by the Nebula leader, am I not passive? Maybe I will be killed on the spot." "No, Mo Yidao, if I am the Nebula leader, not only will I not kill you, but I will also take you for my own use. This is the means of the big man." After a conversation, Yi Ming meditated, Mo Yidao said to buy some food, and people left in a hurry. After half an hour, he appeared in an ordinary yard. There is a ban on the courtyard. No sound or video will be transmitted. In a room in the courtyard, Emperor Shang and Han Juyin were both there. In addition, there are 3 other people with vague faces who cannot see who they are. As soon as Mo Yidao entered, he knelt down on the ground. "Church Master, Nangongji really accepted Yi Ming as an apprentice, but he should still be inspecting him." Han Juyin nodded. As long as we accept him as an apprentice, we can start the next step. Mo Yidao nodded. Yes. Then he didn't say a word and turned away. After he left, Emperor Shang said, "If this thing is done, we will rewrite the history of the human race. But if we fail, we will never lose it, everything is worth it." A human face with a vague face, his voice was peaceful, and the momentum was still above the emperor. "Hope," said the emperor. After that, everyone disappeared silently and never seemed to appear.